going to have a talk. Hi, my name is Mark. Today, I'm going to be hosting this little stream. Today, we're going to be talking about God, about His love, about His mercy, His forgiveness, and about how we kind of don't really give Him all the love He kind of deserves. All the love that He deserves. So, when people think of God, specifically the God from, the Jewish, the Christian, and the Catholic religions, people usually think of, I didn't have the microphone on. I am a buffoon. I am an idiot. Alright, so, hi, my name is Mark. Today I'm going to be the person hosting the stream. And today we're going to be talking about God's love, about His forgiveness, about His mercy, and we're going to be talking about how we underappreciate Him and don't give Him the respect and the love that He deserves. Give me a second. I'm going to go close this door because it bothers me and I don't want any noise. So we're just gonna boop. All right. Back on track. So, when people think of God, specifically the God from the Jewish, Christian, and Catholic religions, people usually think of this angry God who tends to make a bunch of rules, who judges people, and if anyone steps out of line, he immediately destroys them and casts them out of his creation. But when you actually take a moment to look at the Bible itself, it seems to be quite the opposite. The God in the Bible, specifically the Christian Bible, seems to be a very loving and kind God, not the stereotypical angry God that we think about. Now, most people, when they think of that angry God, they're thinking about the God from the Old Testament. But even in the Old Testament, God shows a lot of love and mercy and forgiveness. And that is what we're going to be talking about today. So, we're going to be covering love, mercy, and how we should give God a lot more credit. Part 1, love. Alright, so from the very beginning, God has had a lot of love for us, for humanity. Let's read Genesis chapter 1. This is going to help us have a bigger understanding of, God's love and His caring for His creation. We're going to Genesis chapter 1. We're going to jump down a little bit to verse 26, I'm pretty sure. Yes. Wait, no, 27. All right. Wait, no, 26. Never mind. I'm This is why you script things before you start preaching. You're going to start jumping around without any idea of what you're doing. All right. So, then God said, "Let us make humankind in our image, in the likeness of ourselves, and let them rule over the fish in the sea, the birds in the air, the animals, and over all the earth, and over every crawling creature that crawls on the earth." So God created humankind in His own image. In the image of God He created him. Male and female He created them. God blessed them. God said to them, "Be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea, the birds in the air, and over every living creature that crawls on the earth." Then God said, "Here, throughout the whole earth, I am giving you as food every seed-bearing plant and every tree with seed-bearing fruit, and to every wild animal, bird in the air, and creature crawling on the earth, in which there is a living soul, I am giving as food every kind of green plant." And that is how it was. God saw everything that He had made, and indeed, it was very good. So there was evening, and there was morning, a sixth day. Genesis chapter 1, verses 26 to 31. All right, so there are a lot of things that we can take out of this. First, verse 27. So God created humankind in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. Here we see that while every single other animal that was in the sea, in the sky, on the land, all have their own unique and different designs, here, when God creates humans, he creates them in his own appearance, which every animal has some kind of link to, well, most animals have some sort of link to the basic working of a human, skeletons, organs, but here we see that God made humans specifically to be exactly like him, in his exact very image, in his exact likeness. Here it's kind of an honor that out of all the creatures, God kind of puts us on a pedestal over all the other creatures. And later on in Genesis chapter 2, we see that God gave humanity the job to take care of the animals and to name them and to take care of the plants. And later on here, verse 28, chapter 1, and here we see, rule over the fish in the sea, the birds in the air, and every living creature that crawls on the earth. Be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and subdue it. God blessed us with this entire planet that we could rule, that we could fill with life, with more life by multiplying and taking care of this whole entire planet, because we see in Genesis chapter 2, verse 15, Adonai God took the person and put him in the Garden of Eden to cultivate and care for it. Our original job in creation is to multiply, fill the earth with more people, and to take care of the earth, to expand this garden, to not just be from the Garden of Eden, but to expand life throughout the entire earth. That is the job that we have. Now, so that's number one. And it seems that God put us in a very high position, and the Bible is very aware of the high position. Now, in Psalm chapter 8, there's a psalm made by David about giving thanks to God for how much power he kind of gave to humans. He even mentions that we were put higher than the angels, which is kind of true when you think about it, because the angels were placed in heaven. Of course, they live in heaven, with God. They rule God. They don't rule with God. They worship God and they're servants of God. But here you see the humans, they have an entire planet of their own to take care of. And God, walks among them, and they rule with God over this planet. And the Bible is, and here David notices this, how he's put us more powerful than the angels above and over all the animals and all the plants. So let me read the psalm for the leader on the Gittit, a psalm of David. Adonai, our Lord, how glorious is your name throughout the earth. The fame of your majesty spreads even above the heavens. From the mouths of babies and infants at the breast you establish strengths because of your foes, in order that you might silence the enemy and the avenger. When I look at your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and stars that you set in place, what are mere mortals that you concern yourself with them? Humans that you watch over them with such care. You made him but a little lower than the angels. You crowned him with glory and honor. You made him rule what your hands made. You put everything under his feet, sheep and oxen, all of them. Also the animals in the wilds, the birds in the air, the fish in the sea, whatever passes through the paths of the seas. Adonai, our Lord, how glorious is your name throughout the earth. I think I made a small mistake here. It mentions that we were a little bit lower than the angels. But even that is still amazing, how God has put us in this position, because the angels, they have this really high rank. I mean, they practically are neighbors with God, if we're talking in a more human sense. They live with God in heaven. They worship him. They sing for him daily. They send messages for him. They are they are the divine council. They are the cherubim. They are the ones who guard God's throne. Yet here we are, mere mortals. I mean, God makes ministers. The Bible itself says here. Let me look for it. It should be Hebrews chapter. I'm pretty sure. I have no idea. All right, here it is. I think I found it. Never mind. I didn't. Never mind. All right, so there's a verse. I don't remember where it is. Right now. But there's a verse somewhere that I can't find right now, but there is a verse about how God makes his angels straight out of fire and wind. How epic is that? That God can make the fire and the wind work for him, practically bend towards his will, if you will. That unintentionally rhymed. But here we are, us humans. If we go to Genesis chapter 2, verse 7, this is what it says. Then Adonai God formed a person from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of living life, so that he became a living being. I mean, here we have the animals, and here we have all the animals, the animals of the land, the birds of the air, the fish of the sea, who are made out of God's very spoken word. We have the angels that are made out of air and out of pure fire. And then we have us, made out of the dust on the ground that now we walk over, we bend to our wills, we kick around, we ignore. Think about that. Now this is a story that most people, or not most people, but most people who, when I preach, they know the story. One time, I was waiting for my mother outside of a 99-cent store, and I had picked up 2 rocks, and I looked at them, and I thought to myself, wow, to us, or rather to you, we seem like these giant big monsters that do not have any care for life and just abuse things for our own well-being. But for God, we are just as small, even smaller than you are to us. Those rocks, we kick them around, we walk over them, we abuse them practically for our own entertainment, for our own well-being. And when you think about it, to God, we are smaller than grains of sand on a beach. We are dare I say, we are pathetic. We are small, we are tiny, yet even though we are very small in comparison to the angels, in comparison to God, God still cares for us. He gave us power to rule over this world. And even now, after the great sin, we still are alive. We still can. We live. We are able to live. We are able to eat. We're able to spend time with the ones we love. The Lord really shows his love for us, despite us being very small in comparison to him or the angels. And you see how much we can get just from the first 2 chapters of the Bible? Just from that way. Heck, even from just the first chapter in the Bible, you can already have an idea of God's graciousness. Now, of course, here I'm covering before, the great sin that happens in chapter 3. Now, this is when people start to believe that here's when God started turning into this great, angry monster who, whenever anyone steps out of line, they get killed. And it seems that the Bible would imply this, right? Because here we have Genesis chapter 2, verses 16 to 17, where God says this. Adonai God gave the person this order. You may freely eat from every tree in the garden, except the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You are not to eat from it, because on the day that you eat from it, it will become certain that you will die. God doesn't want Adam and Eve stepping out of the line, out of the boundaries He has put for them. Now, here, Genesis 3. We, humans, or in this case Eve, but Eve makes a decision. Throughout the entire Bible, God was the one deciding what's good and what's wrong. He saw everything He had created, the light, the plants, the animals, and He said it's good. When He created humans, He made it better. He said it's very good. When He saw that Adam was alone before the creation of Eve, He saw that it was not good. God has been the one deciding what is good and what is evil. But here, Eve decides what is good. Quote from verse 6 of chapter 3. When the woman saw that the tree was good for food, that it had a pleasing appearance, and that the tree was desirable for making one wise, she took some of the fruit and ate. She also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate. Here, this is the first time humans have taken control for themselves. Now, here I've talked about how much power God has given us. Sometimes, power can be used for good, but at other times, when you let it get into your head, you start deciding what is good and what is wrong. Now, think of this from God's perspective. Your children, the people who you have created, who you have loved, who you have taken care of, who you've given power to, suddenly turn against you. They come up to you, basically slap you, spit in your face, and say this: we are not going to walk by your rules anymore. We want to walk by our rules. Think about that. Isn't that just awful? Imagine that, in that situation, that's when now imagine being God in that situation. You've been backstabbed by the people you've loved and you've protected and you've given shelter to. But what do you do in that situation? Now, you being a human would most likely think, I'm going to, do what I said I would do and just kill them off, destroy them. But here's what God does. He curses them. Now, of course, a curse is this great thing, A curse is this really bad thing. He curses all three of them, the serpent, Adam, and Eve. But in between these curses, or at the very start, before the curses, never mind, in the middle of these curses, God makes a promise. Genesis 3:15, the classic verse of all classic verses. I will put animosity between you and the woman, and between your descendant and her descendant. He will bruise your head, and you will bruise his heel. Here, God makes a promise. One day will come a redeemer, a descendant of Eve, who will sacrifice their own life, getting their heel bit by the snake, to destroy the snake, Satan, Lucifer, the causer of all evil. So, despite what Adam and Eve have done, He's forgiven them. Not only with a promise, but a sacrifice for them. Let's go a couple verses later. Genesis chapter 3, verse 21. Adonai God made garments of skin for Adam and his wife and clothed them. Where would God be able to, how would God be able to give them clothes? What did He use? Well, it says it right there. Garments of skin, most likely from a sheep or from a cow, most likely wool or leather. God sacrifices an animal to forgive them. He kills off a cow or a sheep and kills them instead of killing Adam and Eve. Now we get to part 2, forgiveness. Throughout the whole Bible, God has given us, humanity, forgiveness despite all that we've done. This is one of the many examples I could give. Right now, I'm going to give 3 examples. One, a simple example from the start of the Bible. Another one, a slightly greater example, a betrayal. And third, the greatest sacrifice and forgiveness of it all. So, in Exodus, God has just freed his people, the people who he has made a covenant with. He has just freed them from slavery in Egypt for over 400 years. Now, here is what happened. God has just freed his people after a long, long time of suffering as slaves. And he's making a covenant with them. The covenant practically goes like this. A covenant is like a deal. The covenant goes like this. We're going to follow your rules, and we're going to try and live in a healthy, good, and sinless lifestyle. That's Israel's part of the deal. God's part of the deal, I will be your God and protect you from your enemies forever. Now, not even a little bit over a month has passed from the time God made this deal. And you want to know what the Israelites do? They betray him. They build a golden calf and replace God. Now, let's read what it says. Exodus chapter 32, verse 2, all the way to 6. Aaron said to them, "Have your wives, sons, and daughters strip off their gold earrings and bring them to me." The people stripped off their gold earrings and brought them to Aaron. He received what they gave him, melted it down, and made it into the shape of a calf. They said, "Israel, here is your God who has brought you up from the land of Egypt." On seeing this, Aaron built an altar in front of it and proclaimed, "Tomorrow is to be a feast for Adonai." Early the next morning, they got up and offered burnt offerings and presented peace offerings. Afterwards, the people sat down to eat and drink. Then they got up to indulge in revelry. They made a metal statue to replace God, then proceeded to worship and sin in front of it. Now, here, I'm going to put you in God's shoes once more. You've made a covenant with this people years and years before this. Over 400 years before this. You made a promise. They made a promise to you as well. They made a promise, we're going to be your people, and you're going to be our God. We're going to be a symbol for other people on how to act, on how to behave. And then they betray you. They make a calf in your image, a replacement for you that can't breathe, that can't think, that can't help them, to replace you. This is the people that's supposed to represent you in front of all the other nations? God himself said that he was going to, right there, he was going to destroy them all. But he didn't. Moses helped him, reminded him of his promise. Now, God could have been like, I don't care, they broke my promise, so I can break that one. I can break the promise I made so many years ago. But he didn't. He didn't break that promise. He forgave them. He gave them an opportunity to change. Those who decided to follow him lived. He gave them all a chance. It was their own ignorance that caused their death. And here's the verse that describes God perfectly. Exodus chapter 34, verses 6 to 7. Adonai passed before him, who is Moses, and proclaimed, Yud-Heh-Vah-Heh, Yud-Heh-Vah-Heh. Adonai is God, merciful and compassionate, slow to anger, rich in grace and truth, showing grace to the 1,000th generation, forgiving offenses, crimes, and sins, yet not exonerating the guilty, but causing the negative effects of the parents' offenses to be experienced by their children and grandchildren, and even by the 3rd and 4th generations. This verse sums up the character of God seen in the Bible perfectly. God is a merciful and loving God. Despite us being literal specks of dust, he still has a lot of respect and love for us. And even when we sin, he forgives us if we come back to him in repentance, if we change, if we learn from our mistakes. But if we don't, he is going to give discipline. Because, as we know, as the Bible says in the Book of Proverbs, if you don't discipline a child, how are they going to learn? He does this as a sign to show what their mistakes cause and to show them that they can change and that there is going to be consequences for their actions. Now, we're going to move on to the Book of Jonah, a pretty popular book, surprisingly, despite it only being 4 chapters long. Now, it starts off like this, chapter 1, verses 1 to 3. The word of Adonai came to Jonah, the son of Amittai. Set out for the great city of Nineveh, and proclaim to it that their wickedness has come to my attention. But Jonah, I read the Hebrew version of the name, hold on. But Jonah, in order to get away from Adonai, prepared to escape to Tarshish. He went down to Yaffo, found a ship headed for Tarshish, paid the fare, and went aboard, intending to travel with them to Tarshish and get away from Adonai. God gave him crystal clear instructions on where to go. This was a prophet of his who has been working for him for a while. Now, a prophet is a messenger sent from God to send a message to the people. God gives a message to the prophet, then the prophet gives a message to the people. A very important job. Now, a prophet is usually a very trusted person by God. Kind of like a partnership. But here, Jonah breaks that partnership. He goes against God. He goes against what God tells him. He breaks God's trust. Now, there's a quote that doesn't come from the Bible, but that kind of fits this idea. That kind of fits this story. The quote goes like this: "The treachery of demons is nothing compared to the betrayal of an angel." This wasn't just any regular human. Now, of course, that's still a great sin for any regular human to betray God. But here we have a prophet, a person chosen specifically by God to send his messages to the people. That's another great backstab. But here, Jonah prays. He talks with God, and he gives thanks to God because he saved him. God is a very merciful figure in the Bible. This time, Jonah, a trusted prophet of his, betrays his trust. Yet God saves him. And even after being saved, Jonah is mad. Jonah is mad, he's angry, and he's against God. Yet God doesn't kill him off. He just shows him a lesson. Not a very physical lesson, but a spiritual lesson. Now, a vine had grown over Jonah. Let me find the verse. Here it is. Jonah 5 to 11. Jonah left the city and found a place east of the city, where he made himself a shelter and sat down under it in its shade to see what would happen to the city. Jonah God had prepared a castor bean plant and made it grow up over Jonah to shade his head and to relieve his discomfort. So Jonah was delighted with the castor bean plant. But at the dawn of the next day, God prepared a worm, which attacked the castor bean plant so that it dried up. Then, when the sun rose, God prepared a scorching east wind, and the sun beat down on Jonah's head so hard that he grew faint and begged that he could die, saying, "I would be better off dead than alive." God asked Jonah, "Is it right for you to be angry about the castor bean plant?" He answered, "Yes, it's right for me to be so angry that I could die." Adonai said, "You're concerned over the castor bean plant, which cost you no effort. You didn't make it grow. It came up in a night and perished in a night. So shouldn't I be concerned about the great city of Nineveh, in which there are more than 120,000 people who don't know their right hand from their left, not to mention all the animals?" And then the Book of Jonah cuts right there. The Book of Jonah also seems to be a very now, of course, Exodus 34 was a couple of verses that described God perfectly. Jonah is an entire book in the Bible that describes God's personality. God here teaches Jonah. He doesn't kill him off as he begs, but instead teaches him a lesson. Plus, if he dies, what is he going to learn? He's not going to learn anything from his mistakes. And of course, he's not going to be able to continue them if he's dead, but still, it's important for a lesson to be taught. So here we have these examples of God's forgiveness and God's love, and how God tries to teach us of our mistakes and help us learn from our mistakes. And now I'm going to talk about a mixture of these two stories: God's love and his forgiveness. Now, Jesus is God. He is God made into flesh. The Book of John, chapter 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was God, and he was with God in the beginning, and all things came through him, and without him nothing made had being. In him was life, and life was the light of mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not suppressed it. The Word became a human being and lived with us, and we saw his glory, the glory of the Father's only Son, full of grace and truth. God, in human form, comes down to visit us, and he dies. People love the darkness more than they love the light, as the Book of John once again says. He died in a very shameful way. Heck, God even coming down here is very shameful. I mean, God is in the heavens. He has his throne. He has a bunch of angels singing for him. The cherubim, these wild, gigantic beasts protecting his throne. And then he comes down to earth, a place full of wickedness, violentness. Heaven is a beautiful, perfect place. But earth, it's dirty, filled, intoxicated. People hate each other. They kill each other over simple things. I mean, look at us now. You have an opinion about something, and people start choking you. They start choking, killing you, sending you death threats over an opinion you have about the smallest, littlest thing. Not only did Jesus come to this earth, he became human. He suffered all the emotions that we feel. He suffered hunger. He suffered anger. He suffered sadness, pain. and he even suffered temptation. And in the end, he ended up dying in a very shameful way. You see my arm, right? Now imagine a piece of metal being shoved through here. Not only through the skin, breaking the bone and ripping out through the other half of your hand, being glued to a wooden board. Imagine that on both of your hands. Now, imagine your legs placed through one another. This time, the nail goes through both. Through skin, through bone, then through skin again. Through skin, through another layer of bone. And placed on a wooden slab. Now, crucifixion is a very shameful death. It was a very shameful experience. Crucifixion was the most cruel and disgusting punishment. Quote from Cicero. The very mention of the cross should be far removed, not only from a Roman citizen's body, but from his mind, his eyes, and his ears. And Jesus suffered that. He suffered the shame of being placed on the cross. Yet he hadn't done no sin. He had no deserving of shame, of death. Yet he went through it. All because of his love for you. I'm pointing the wrong way. For me and for you. Think about that. Think about the description I just gave you. A nail. A metal nail. Being shoved through your skin, through your bone, and out of your hand. Both of your feet placed over one another. A hard nail being slammed through it, through the bone of both feet. You're gasping for any sort of air while being hung on the cross, holding yourself up for dear life. Breathing on it is like breathing on a wet blanket. Struggling for all sense of air. Jesus did that for 3 hours, suffering through that pain, all for us. Think about that. Doesn't seem so angry and vengeful. Even when he does punish people, it's to help them learn from their mistakes, see the error in their ways, to help them change, and to help them become a better person. In Exodus, God gave the Israelites a chance. God said, "Whoever is on my side, stand behind Moses. Whoever's on the calf's side, stand behind the calf." People had a choice. We have a choice to decide where our life goes. The two paths. We can live a righteous life, or we can live a sinful, painful life, causing pain to one another, and eventually, that pain is going to come flying right back to you. But you treat others nicely. That niceness is also coming back to you. You can form bonds, friendships when you're kind, when you're humble, when you treat others how you want to be treated. Take a moment from your time. Maybe in the morning, maybe late in the night. Take a moment to pray. Don't pray for something. Don't pray for any material item. By praying, I don't mean the stereotypical hands, hands like this, hands put on one another, head bowing down, eyes closed. I'm talking about talking with God, having a conversation with God. Taking a moment from your time. You can do it in the most you can do it in a very posh way, a very fancy way. Our Father in heaven, we give you thanks for everything you've done. Or you can do it in a more chill, simple way. Hey, thank you for everything. Whatever style, whatever form you may like, the important thing is to talk with God. Have a conversation. Give him thanks for everything he's done. For letting you wake up. For giving you food. For letting you spend time with family, with friends. For letting you be able to do the things you can do, to draw, to write, to make stories, whatever other thing that I can't think of right now because I'm unoriginal. Give him thanks. Say, hey God. You can use his Hebrew names, Elohim, Adonai, whatever you're most comfortable with. Thank you for everything. When you're at a church, don't sleep. Do not try and rest. Do not hide in the back. Do whatever you can to worship God. If you can, dance. Praise God like that. If you can't, clap for him. Maybe tap your foot on the floor, just like a simple clap like that. God appreciates all forms of worship, even what would be considered the lazy ones. Heck, he even appreciates just being able to talk with you, you wanting to hang out with him, just being able to talk with him. That is all I'm going to say for today. Take a moment from your time, from your day. Give him thanks. Talk to him. Hang out. Worship him. Study his word. Maybe you can be like 5-year-old me who would make a bunch of drawings of the characters in the Bible. Maybe you can make a drawing for him, Maybe you can make a story, kind of like a retelling of what the Bible says. Now, of course, you can't go too far with that retelling. You can't be mixing and matching, but maybe you can write kind of like a script of all the stories of Jesus as kind of a thank you. Whatever you're talented at, you can use that for worshiping God. Worshiping God isn't just about clapping, about dancing around. You can make a drawing for him. You can write a book about him. Just talking with him is enough for God, because God has incredible love for us. Now, brothers and sisters, my time is coming near to a close. This has been Mark Painter, here to talk with you today. Thank you if you're still here, thank you for sitting around these 50 minutes. I hope you may have gotten something out of this. If you have, use it wisely. Use the words that I have given to you wisely. But in the end, it all comes to you. Goodbye. God bless, and have a nice day, night, evening, or morning.